I think that's what I like about Metallica, their willingness to change from one record to another.
Do you think that being able to switch between sounds and establish these different eras is something that characterizes a great band? If you're gonna repeat the same formula for decades, you're basically not that talented. Would you agree with me, Lana?
Oh, for sure. I wouldn't say that they're not talented if they repeat themselves, but yeah, I mean, the great bands, the legendary bands, they all went through different stages and changed their sound and challenged their fans, challenged the perception that existed about them. You know, the Beatles changed so much within the span of 7 years. And that's one of the things that people still talk about, how the Beatles were able to do so much within such a short span. So I really don't understand the criticism that Metallica gets for changing their sound, especially with Load. I mean, look at all these peers of theirs like Slayer and Megadeth. They were never capable of pulling off the same trick. And I think that's what makes Metallica the greatest out of the bunch. And dear listeners, if you disagree, please let me know why I'm wrong. Um, so, Load, you said might be your favorite Metallica album. I also think of Load in very high regard. I think it's one of those records that truly challenge the listener because it's such a dramatic change. When I was a kid, I hated it for that reason because I thought my old Metallica was gone. But then with years, I really embraced it because there's so much to like about this record. As I previously mentioned, the epics like Bleeding Me, The Outlaw Torn, The House That Jack Built, where James talks about his personal demons, his fight with alcoholism, ballads like Hero of the Day, so wonderfully crafted. Mama Said, a country ballad, again, a very personal song.
Cure
Like
is
the
also a great track.
Yeah, the band really branched out and they were willing to try something new. And I bet my life they knew they were going to have a huge backlash because they could have easily made Black Album Part 2 and pleased everyone. And some people say, oh, well, but at that time, thrash metal wasn't very fashionable anymore. People didn't care about it. Yeah, but this was Metallica. And that time, they were such major stars that they could have released anything and it would have sold. And they could have easily stuck with the same formula. So I don't think they did this to sell out. I think that James was probably under the influence of corrosion of conformity, another great band, a band that were always friends with Metallica. And I think he wanted to go in that direction, do some stuff that's more raw, that has more of that stoner garage rock feel. And but I think they did it spectacularly. And to this day, I don't understand people who claim that Load is too long or they should have they should have taken the best tracks from Load and Reload and released one record. No, I think Load is perfectly fine the way it is. I don't think it has any major filler moments. I think most of the songs are really amazing to listen to. So yeah, I hold it in a very very high regard. I think it's one of maybe top 3 or top 4 Metallica records. Certainly better than the Black Album in my book.
Definitely. Oh, finally we can agree on something, Lada. Um, as I said, I don't really have much to add here from start to finish. Such a good album, leaning more towards some rock sound, so to say, but still keeping the metal element. Also, the lyrics and the singing. Sorry, got a
I
bit.
even wouldn't call it a metal album. I don't think that matters. I think these kind of genre labels only matter to people who are too narrow minded. It doesn't have to be metal to be great. I don't know if I would classify Load as a metal album, but I don't care because it's still a great record.
Yeah, in terms of sounds, I mean, it would be easier to kind of classify stuff, but as you said, it's not the name that matters here. It's the content. It's the actual songs here. Vlada, the next album, Reload. Some say that it's just a continuation. It's a copy of Load. What do you think about people that are saying that?
I mean, I think they're right because just the leftover tracks from the sessions basically load number two. Some great tracks there though. The memory remains still a fan favorite after all these years. Every time when they do it live, people just go insane. So I don't understand Metallica fans. They trashed all these songs, they trashed all these records, and then bam, when they see Metallica live and they go into the memory remains, everyone is going crazy. When they go into Frantic, everyone is going crazy. So please make up your mind, people. Do you hate these records or not? Okay? What do you say?
I'm now starting to question whether all these critical and uh, moaning fans actually go to concerts.
I'm pretty sure they do. Maybe not all of them, but I'm fairly certain most of them do. And I think, I mean, I don't want to be harsh. I think I understand the disappointment and criticism because I was also very disappointed when I was younger. And I kind of came to terms with the fact that I will never get another Justice for All and Master of Puppets. And I should just enjoy these albums for what they are and not expect any more music like that because you can't expect the band to repeat themselves unless they're ACDC. You know, you're not gonna get it. Like, and who wants a band like ACDC as great as they are? You know, I just don't get very enthusiastic about their new work because I just expect the same old. You know, like if I want to listen to ACDC, I will revisit the 70s records. So I think there's that, and I understand some of the criticism. A lot of it is justified, but sometimes I think that there is some kind of schizophrenia going on because the same people who criticize all these songs they go insane when they hear them in concert.
Yes, I guess that's a question that we want to ask all the listeners that we have, all the metal fans and Metallica fans here. All right, so moving on to the 21st century, Vlada, with the infamous Saint Anger album. Okay, so first I want to say again from start to finish, a ton of great tracks. Frantic was the first Saint Anger track that I ever heard, followed by the title track Saint Anger, and what I really liked about it is it's all about the emotion and the anger and the aggression about this album, which I really like, and which is something that I genuinely take from metal music. Whenever I need that kind of energy, I just listen to metal music or some other heavy types of music, so to say. And I remember also the music video of Frantic. It's so good, so personal. You know, do you remember the music video, Vlada?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I've seen it so many times. But I have to say about Saint Anger that I do understand the hatred that it gets, primarily because of that annoying pot sound. You know,
It's so good.
it's not good. Okay, and another thing is, I've thought a lot about this record, and here are my main issues with this album. First of all, at some points, they sound too much like the new metal albums of the time, the new metal artists, and I just don't understand. Were they trying to pander to the new audience? Were they trying to sell out with this one? Now that's a genuine question here because, or were they just trying to incorporate these sounds because they genuinely like them? That's one question I have. I'm not sure. They don't exactly sound like those new metal bands, thanks God, because that's a redeeming factor. And the music is not that dumbed down, you know, like to sound like Limp Bizkit or something. So thanks God for that. Another thing that strikes me is that I feel this record is unfinished. I feel that, and if you look at the film, Some Kind of Monster, if you watch that film, you will see how many problems they had to deal with at that time with James' rehab and everything, and him being on a very carefully monitored schedule, not being able to maybe fully dedicate himself to the record. I think that that's probably why the record kind of comes across as being somewhat unfinished. There's a lot of tracks here that I think the band could easily do away with, like Invisible Kid. That track just goes nowhere. It just like based on one simple riff, the lyrics are kind of grating. Just doesn't have much going for it. Uh, Dirty Windows somewhat better, okay, kind of catchy, but still feels a bit unfinished, a bit, uh, well, too unpolished. Even though I guess that's the point of this record, to be unpolished, but not to this extent, because there are other tracks here that sound awesome and fully realized and that have such a great emotional resonance. The frantic, as you mentioned. Now, some people mock the lyrics, my lifestyle, that style, whatever. I think uh, these lyrics might be a bit cringy, but at the same time, I like the raw emotion behind them. I like James's vocals again. I think he's very powerful on some of these tracks, and I love that kind of badass attitude that he adopted on the Load albums and on this one too. Saint Anger, also great track, great title track. The famous Alcatraz prison video. Was it? No, it was Saint Quentin. Sorry, Alcatraz is closed. It was Saint Quentin. Uh, just amazing again. Great riffs, very melodic, but it has some really awkward hip hop kind of backing vocals, which I felt was also this kind of flirtation with new metal bands. Completely unnecessary, completely just spoiling the whole thing. When I first heard that, that part, flush it out, I just thought, what the hell are they doing? What the hell are they doing? That was my first thought. I just couldn't, for the life of me, understand why a band with so much integrity and with such talent would include something so banal in their songs. So there's that. It's still a great track. Some Kind of Monster, very good track. But my personal favorite is Unnamed Feeling. I think that's one of Metallica's best tracks. And again, I love those personal James Hetfield tunes where he talks about his personal demons. This time he sings about anxiety, and if you've ever had experience with anxiety, you can totally relate to this song. He perfectly captures that moment, that feeling of anxiety. And for that track alone, I'd never ever trash this album. And I think this album has some other great stuff going on for it and is kind of unfairly maligned by a lot of people. But it probably has to do with those bad things that I listed, that people can't see beyond them. What's your take on that?
You remember when we covered Korn in one of our episodes and we talked about all these uh, self-deprecation lyrics, being so anxious and unhappy with yourself. That's the topic of this album, and you're totally right. I think they drew some influence from those new metal bands. I mean, let's not forget this album was released in 2003, so the beginning of the 2000s was a new metal period.
And why would
Uh,
Metallica draw influence from new metal bands when they're so below them? That's what I don't get it.
um, I think that they kind of played the risky card with the load and reload, and then wanted to go back and play it safe in a way.
But was this playing safe? That's also a good question because this is so unlike anything the band has ever done before or since.
playing safe in the sense of following the trends at that time, Vlada. You know.
Okay, but that just justifies criticism in my mind, and that's the low point of this record. But some of the songwriting and ideas and the raw emotion and James's performance really saves it, I think. And I honestly feel that people who didn't like it back then should go and revisit it and give it another chance, listen to it with a more open mind, try to get past some of these flaws.
Yes, exactly. Okay, Vlada. Now, what I want to also point out here, this is the album. This is the period actually where when they introduced their new bassist. Now, Bob Rock played bass for this album, but after releasing Saint Anger, their current bassist, Rob Trujillo, was hired. So that kind of marked a new era when it comes to their bass sound. And what do you think so far? Is Rob Trujillo has he been a good replacement for Jason Newsted?
So I think Trujillo was a great replacement, mainly because of his chops, because of his instrumental prowess. People still claim Cliff Burton was the best bass player they had, and from the creative standpoint, probably, but I think Trujillo might be the guy with the best chops. Now that's questionable, but he might be. I mean, he's really stunning, and his playing style, and also he's such a great music aficionado. He did a documentary about Jaco Pastorius, for example. His son, who is now only, what, 13, 14 years old, he already played with Korn live. So, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. This guy is a phenomenal musician and a great human being, going by all accounts. So, definitely a good replacement for Jason, even though it's kind of hard to replace Jason's energy and presence live on stage. And I really regret never seeing Metallica with Jason.
Yeah, that's what I want to say here. I mean, Jason Newsted, I might be controversial here, but Jason Newsted was basically Metallica in a nutshell. I think that he was truly the backbone of that band when he was there.
Maybe kind of like not the backbone, but maybe the soul of the band. You know, like he was the one who infused their live performances with so much energy and so much vigor, and I think that's something that they kind of lost a bit with his departure. But what they gained in Trujillo was great professionalism, a great instrumentalist. So I think that it's a win-win situation for Metallica anyway. I think they're doing fine without Jason, and they probably regret the way things ended between them. But maybe it was also good for Jason to leave Metallica. We see that nowadays he doesn't really do much because he has some physical issues, uh, some health issues that are basically a consequence of his years with Metallica. So there's that too. It's not that easy to be in Metallica.
Yes, exactly. Okay, my kind of final say about Jason is sorry guys, I may sound like a fanboy, but I really rate Jason and I really liked his backing vocals. And I want to ask you, Vlada, personally. So, knowing, all the stuff that happened between Metallica and Jason, when he was about to depart the band, do you think that Metallica did Jason wrong after all these years?
I don't know. It's so hard to talk about these things when you're not really privy to what was going on. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just had a certain way of doing things that he didn't want to go along with. I don't know. I guess it's not something you can talk about. Not having the experience of being in such a big band and having so much fame to deal with and so much pressure. I'm certain Metallica had too much pressure to deal with, and some of it is their own fault, like the whole Napster fiasco. But yeah, let's just leave it at that. I wouldn't comment. It seems like both Jason and the band are still on good terms, so that's really important here.
Okay, one interesting question for you. Do you think that Metallica would ever release Saint Anger with Jason in the lineup?
Probably, but yeah, I think it would have probably sounded similar. And I think because at this point, Jason just had to go along with whatever other guys wanted, meaning Lars and James. So I think that's why he was so unhappy because he wasn't able to have any creative output, and that's why he wanted to pursue his own project, which is why they split up. He wanted to do things with his band Echo Brain, but the band members felt that they had this rule that no member of Metallica should have their own projects, that they should all fully dedicate their creativity to Metallica. But then on the other hand, he didn't really get enough space to express himself within the band. So that's why you got the split. And yeah, I think they would have released something similar, maybe somewhat different, but pretty much a similar sounding album.
Yeah, okay. So, we are now approaching the final two records released by Metallica so far. Vlada, now Death Magnetic. Um, to be honest, before I listened to the album, I was really a fan of the album artwork, so I had kind of high expectations and a positive prejudice, so to say. But to be honest, the whole album, it's safe to say that it was disappointing. Sorry to say that to all the Metallica fans, especially the younger ones. I still see young Metallica fans rocking the Death Magnetic T-shirts, but I don't know. I just kind of felt that they weren't quite sure what they were doing here.
Well, it just didn't sound like your favorite kitchen utensils, but yeah. No, but to be more serious, I think back when it came out, the band was kind of getting everyone stoked for the record that would go back to their early period, that would be sort of And Justice for All Volume 2. So everyone was prepared for that record. They even fired Bob Rock and hired Rick Rubin, one of the greatest producers of all time, the guy who worked with Slayer on their classic Rain in Blood. So people were very excited about getting Metallica back to their thrash roots and so on. And then the record came out, and some people were saying, yeah, the old Metallica's back, blah, blah. But it wasn't quite true, right? I think that it's an interesting fusion of some of these thrash elements with more reload era elements, and a good record at that. Not a bad record by any measure. Kind of a grower, not as immediate as some other stuff, but I really enjoy it nowadays. When I put it back on, I really enjoy it. When I first listened to it, I was kind of very critical of it and just kept looking for flaws, and I wasn't too happy about it. And I even felt Saint Anger was better because it sounded more real and more authentic.